New York, and on the new Hot 97 app. Ebro in the morning. On Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning. Beautiful Laura Styles. Deray McKesson on the program. Give it up one time. Listen, we got to get right to your controversy. It says here, there's a section on my prep sheet here. It says, controversy. A video posted Thursday on Twitter shows McKesson being heckled for purportedly exaggerating his role as an activist for Ferguson and is taking advantage of real activists to promote himself and promote the LGBTQ community. And he steals money from the people. Response.
Yeah, so this is not true. It's unfortunate that this has become a thing that we have to engage. You know, I was one of many people on the street in St. Louis and Ferguson in 2014, 2015. We were in the street for 400 days. Most people forget, you know, people look back on Ferguson, the first wave of protests as if it was like a long weekend, but we were there for 400 days, you
That's
know?
right.
And you think about, if you ever saw us marching, it wasn't that we were marching because we thought it was cool. It was illegal to stand still in August, September, and October of 2014, that if we stood still for more than 5 seconds, we were arrested, which is sort of wild. I was a plaintiff actually in the court case that got that deemed unconstitutional. This issue about money, you know, it comes up often and people think I'm sponsored by Patagonia. I'm not, I'm a customer.
The blue Patagonia vest is definitely controversial. We'll get to that later on the program.
People think I'm sponsored by McDonald's, by Spotify. I don't take money to tweet. And, you know, the reality is that the group of people that I'm closest to, we've raised $140,000 in 4 years, which is not a lot of money, especially in the nonprofit community.
Now, in the video, you're doing a Q&A, or you've been doing these things around the country about your new book.
Talk, yeah. That actually happened literally the moment we sat down. So we had a great event. Over 200 people came in the protest community. There was one person upset, and that video happened like the moment that we sat down. Once that ended, we had a great event, and then we left.
So who is this person someone who was involved with you guys in the 400 days out there in Ferguson? Does this person have any credibility that was heckling you?
And what exactly happened?
Yeah, you know, the thing is that there are a lot of people who are frustrated, and their frustration actually makes a lot of sense, because what is true is that the way that the story has been told about the protests makes it seem like Ferguson and the activists in St. Louis were an insignificant part of it. But what I know to be true, and I think what you know to be true, that if the protests in Ferguson had happened, there would be no movement. There would be no national conversation about race and justice and the police. But that is not how the story is being retold right now. The story is sort of being retold as if Ferguson was sort of like the inevitable conclusion of other people's activism, and that there's like a chapter of something. And like what happened in St. Louis was really beautiful. It was like people came out and they stayed out.
The country came out.
Yeah, it was like this incredible moment. And like, so his frustration actually makes a lot of sense to me about erasure. And like, that is bad, and that's real, right? So in the book, I actually talk about like I name a lot of people that like you don't know, but if not for them, there would be no movement, because if not for Ferguson and St. Louis, like that created the space. So I'm sensitive to that, and I don't want to invalidate those claims. It is hard to be the brunt of people's frustration. Like I didn't do it, right? So like there are people who have raised millions in the protests. Like we chose not to participate in the nonprofit, like that sort of race around money, because we wanted to see, could we make an impact without raising a lot of money?
Well, and most of what this is your third time on this program, second or third?
Second.
Yeah. Every time I talk to you, it feels like you're more wanting to participate in the process of the politics and getting people actually in office to create real policy change.
Yeah, or obsessed with like the system is, you know, when we say the system is broken and people say, oh no, it's working exactly like it was designed, my takeaway from that is that it was designed, right? Somebody made this up, and because people made it up, we can make something different. I'll ask you, name something you can buy for $300.
Sneakers.
In Florida, to this day, theft over $300 is a felony.
Right.
And when you become a felon, you permanently lose the right to vote, right?
That's right.
Like imagine stealing.
I stole some sneakers, some Jordans.
And you lose the right to vote forever in Florida. That's wild. Like somebody made that up, you know?
Well, Florida's a crazy place.
But Florida, 1 in 5 black men in Florida can't vote, which is wild.
That's right.
I'll ask you another thing. How many people on a jury?
12.
12. There are 2 states in the country, Louisiana and Oregon, that have what we call non-unanimous juries. So it only takes 10 of 12 people to convict you of a felony that can lead to life without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
It's wild, right? In Louisiana, it's directly tied to race. Like we can look at the transcripts from the legislature, and it was so that black people like couldn't lower the conviction rate when they sat on juries. And you look at this stuff, and it's like, we can change that, you know? Like that doesn't, so we spend a lot of time trying to unearth those sort of things. Or even like in California, there's a law.
But that's real policy. That's
real. real. Yeah.
Right, that's not like we just want to raise some money and we want to just go into the community and spend money to help people, because there are people doing that, and I applaud those people too, but I've never known that to be your path.
Yeah, and I believe in programs. I used to be a teacher. I was the chief of human capital in the school system, opened up an after-school program, worked at the Harlem Church. So that stuff makes sense to me. I think I'm obsessed now with like the structural things. So you think about California, there's a law in California that literally says that any investigation of an officer that lasts more than a year can never result in discipline regardless of the outcome.
Wait, say that again. Whoa.
Isn't that wild?
Say that again.
The law says that any investigation...
In what state?
In California.
In California.
Any investigation of an officer that lasts more than a year can never result in discipline regardless of the outcome. And you're like, that's just...
So they can just drag it out and then nothing's going to happen.
Who's doing the investigation?
So it could be murder?
Any investigation of an officer that lasts more than a year. Like, that doesn't make sense. In California, actually, 1 in 11 gun homicides is actually committed by an officer, which is, like, wild. You think about in Maryland, the law literally says, you can make an anonymous complaint against an officer for anything except brutality. And you're like, well, that is... Like, if that's not the game, I don't know what it is. Like, in Cleveland... this is why we want LeBron to speak about the police. In Cleveland, the contract literally says that they destroy police officer disciplinary records every 2 years.
I can.
You're like,
nah.
That's wild. So we spent a lot of work trying to uncover. So we created the first public database of use of force policies and police union contracts in the country, because we were like, why is no officer being held accountable? And then it was like, because the game is the game. In Portland, I met with the police chief in Portland, Oregon, and I came in
Did
and
you wear your Patagonia vest? Because Patagonia is big in Portland, Oregon.
I wear a vest everywhere. Yeah. That was the thing that got me in.
They were like, oh, okay. This might go well for us.
And I meet with the police chief, black woman, she just got there, and I come in and I think she thinks I'm like ready to sort of battle. And I'm like, let's talk about the contract.
And she's new.
She's new. Chief outlaw. She's like
just got
7
on.
months.
Yeah.
The contract in Portland literally says, people think we're being dramatic, and I'm like, let's read it. It says an officer has to be disciplined in the least embarrassing way to the officer and the department. You're like, I don't even know what does that mean?
That means don't make the badge look bad.
Of course, you can't have any
and
headlines.
That's
you
the
have to make
rule.
sure it's
So,
hush.
so it's basically like, once you're a police officer, you will not be treated the same way as anybody else in another human being.
It doesn't make sense.
You're not like the rest of us.
Yeah, so I'm obsessed with. So we do a lot of that work. Like, that seems really quiet, but like is really important.
But all that's good and great. But Beyonce follows you on IG. This is a
Twitter,
problem.
not on IG. He's starting rumors.
Only on Twitter. My bad.
Only on Twitter.
Once Beyonce followed you on IG, you weren't official anymore. Or Twitter, you weren't official anymore.
People were really frustrated.
Beyonce, follow him on IG so we can make this work too.
It's interesting because I've spoken to a lot of friends of mine that work in social justice, and I remember last minute I need to get a quote. I need to get somebody to speak on this. But like, yeah, I can't really do that because I need to make sure there's politics. I don't want them thinking I'm taking the shine. I'm like, shine? Who gives a shit about shine right now? We need to get to the issue. But I've noticed that it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling to me because I'm like, no, we have to stick to the issue. Who cares who's speaking about it as long as you're credible? But I've noticed that a lot of my friends that are in social justice have to tiptoe around a lot of things just so they won't publicly be shamed. And it's insane to me. And that's what's happening to you.
Yeah. It's one of those things too where like I think about, especially when I was on the news a long time ago, it was like I'm defending everything, So like there's property damage in Baltimore when Freddie Gray got killed. I'm on the news and I'm like, broken windows are not the same thing as broken spines, right? Like I don't have to condone it to understand it. Like I get why people are frustrated. I remember one day in St. Louis there were fist fights and the news just happened to be there. So they have this like incredible footage of people fighting. And I get on the news the next day and she's like, but Deray, you told me that this was nonviolent. And I like look at the camera and I go, me and my sister fought all the time as kids and I never questioned my love for her. Like I'm like that's what we're doing on the news is like trying to reclaim space, like trying to help people like understand what was happening. And even when we think about the police, I was on a panel once with an officer and she's like, Deray, there's crime in the community. We have to use force sometimes. Are you saying the police should never kill somebody? And I'm like, well, tell me when the police should kill your child, right? Like your kid's gonna make a mistake one day. Like that's probably gonna harm somebody else. When should the police like be able to put a bullet through your kid's head? And she's like, I don't know. It's like, well, if you don't know, I don't know either, right?
But with all of this speaking and all of this profile, right, comes the other side, which is
definitely the other side.
How many lawsuits you got right now?
There are 5 officers in 2 states that are suing me. I'll never forget, the house I used to live in Baltimore was sort of off the beaten path. So if you ended up at the house, like you had to, you can't like randomly be at our house. So I come home one day and there's a guy in the driveway, like in his car. And I'm like, this is not good. So I get out of my car. I'm in an Uber, I get out and he gets out. And
he doesn't work for Uber, guys.
I don't work for Uber.
He doesn't work for Uber, guys. He's not being paid
I get
by
out
Uber.
and the guy gets out of his car and I'm like, I lived a good life. You just have this moment where you're like, this is bad. And he hands me the lawsuit and I'm so thankful that I'm alive, And then he's like, can we get a photo? I'm like, we can do whatever you want. Like, whatever I'm like, just like, thank you for not killing me. I've had a movie theater evacuated because somebody said they were going to come and shoot me. And they asked me if I was too nervous. So I was like, no, I'm good. Movie starts, literally 20 minutes and the police just come down the side. All the lights come on. I'm like, what's going on, guys? They're like, the employees actually don't feel safe being in the building with you. So they had to close the entire building. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, I think we'll be okay. So it's been a longer road. I had my phone hacked, so I'm on a panel and I have two phones. And one phone is like, please activate your phone. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Like, please activate. So I turn it off, turn it back on. And what it came out to is that if you have Verizon, the last 4 digits of your social is your PIN for your Verizon account. So somebody hacked, got my social. They changed my SIM card over the phone, which I didn't know you could do. And then they reset all my passwords so that the like code to go back into your account goes to a device they can control. And then it takes me like all day to get back in my phone. It's just like it's a nightmare. They put my photo up at the NRA convention that just happened. My photo was up on the screen.
I saw that.
You're just like, this is, so it's been like
Saying what?
It was just like, I was like the last thing before Trump came up and spoke. I was just like rested on the screen. And you're like, that's bad. So it's
like as a part of the problem, as he's the enemy. He's the enemy of the NRA, basically.
I just want to hear what they labeled him as. You know what I mean?
I don't even think it was just in I saw the video. It was just like a part of this whole
montage.
These are our problems.
Right. And then it was like, and then my photo just rested on screen. And you're like, that's not good. So it has been like the death threats and those sort of things have not been exciting. And then when I was in jail in Baton Rouge, I got arrested in Baton Rouge, didn't plan to get arrested. And if you plan to get arrested, you have like a lawyer and you have bail money. The police were like, get out of the street. I'm like, cool, get out of the street. I had just started this job. I was like, I'm gonna be low-key. And I'm in jail for 17 hours.
What job?
I was the chief of human capital in the school system in Baltimore, the youngest chief in the history of the district, which I was proud to do. But it was like my 4th day at work, So the protesters in Baton Rouge were like, will you come down? I'm like, yeah, but I'll come down at the end of work. I come down, I'm in jail for 17 hours. And I have no plan, So they're like, who's your lawyer? I don't know. So I'm like, my friends outside are like, they're deciding everything. They're like, who can pay bail? It's just like a nightmare. But anyway, we sued the city of Baton Rouge. It's the first successful class action lawsuit since the protests began. And it was dope because we got 4 things. We got money for people, which was fine, but we got all of their bail refunded. We got all their legal fees refunded. And then we got the record expunged. And it was like a real moment for people. So that was good. But yeah, the bad side of it is what people don't always see, but it is real.
But I think also too, you come off, and I think the frustration for people who follow you or see you on programs or whatever is, you get the notoriety. They think you're rich, right? So they think you're making money off of all this. And we didn't even pay for you to get a car up here because you had to pay for
the news, everybody. The news pays for people to come to the show.
Not radio, man. We just a local radio station.
Like
man.
they do?
When you're seeing it, that's like the perk. Is like you get a car to and from the studio.
Okay. But
not
just
money.
so you know, people don't get paid for interviews, guys. Well, I mean,
no, people
for the
do get
most
paid for
part.
interviews. Hot 97 is not paying none of y'all. Let's be clear.
I didn't even get a car today, everybody.
But I do believe that, we live in a time where a lot of behind-the-scenes dealings are being outed, right?
Yep.
People have always speculated, at least I know in my world, it's always speculated that there's some sinister plot. I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? I don't have a problem with being like, there's something else going on here.
Right.
But also in the activist world, which is trying to rebuild, redesign a system that has repeatedly, been covert in its, and overt sometimes in its attempts to harm black people. You can't be surprised that people are like, yo, you're in on the campaign to infiltrate the activist community with the LGBTQ bug.
The mafia. Yeah, I think what's hard about it is, I'm up here being like, we don't need police. Like, the message is still like an aggressive message, even if it's not delivered in the way that people think it should be delivered, So I'm not surprised. You're right. I'm not surprised about the criticism. I think that what is weird to me is that even when people are confronted with like the facts, people still want to believe it, right? So I had a friend call me the other day and she's like, I had to defend you at dinner. I'm like, well, I haven't even done anything recently. And she's like, people are convinced that you are paid by Twitter, which is why you're not publicly criticizing Twitter right now. And I'm like, I'm not paid by Twitter. You know, like
What would people be publicly criticizing Twitter about?
You know, about the safety on the platform and things like that. And
about what is it? About
Alex
the threats
Jones.
and all
About
that.
the
Alex Jones.
yeah. You know, I'm sensitive to it. Is that the first person ever permanently banned from Twitter was banned for raising money to try and get me killed. So I get it. Like, you know, and that guy now has White House press credentials. So like, that's not good.
Who is that?
His name is Chuck Johnson.
And he got banned from Twitter.
He had a version of a GoFundMe to take me out. Which is why I woke up one morning and I was like, are you really raising money to try and get me killed?
And now he works for Trump.
He has press credentials. He works for somebody else, but he has press credentials, which is like nuts. But you know,
why was he? You can't get arrested for that?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, you could threaten regular people. You can't threaten
politicians and
politicians and the government and things like that. Like people threaten to kill me all the time.
He was raising money.
He was raising money.
It was nuts. It was.
I don't think he actually got the money, did he?
Well, thankfully they took it down. Like he got banned pretty quickly, you know. But he's the first person ever permanently banned from Twitter. Was a guy trying.
He didn't know the rules, man. How many years ago was this?
This is 3 years ago.
Yeah, he didn't know the rules.
He didn't know the rules. Thank God the rules had just changed. It was like ban this man. He's trying to kill me. So I'm sensitive to the criticism. It's actually.
So wait, what is the critique of Twitter today? Because I don't get it. I know with the
that
whole
they move slowly on taking down hate stuff.
That's stuff. So
yeah.
So okay, I have seen that where it's like some hate people are like, yo, get this, right? Like I see people on Twitter like this is hate, this is hate speak.
Or that they're like pandering to the right wing, that they're like trying to be.
Well, Trump owns Twitter.
Trump owns Twitter. You mean he uses the platform really well?
He brought Twitter back.
He did he?
Twitter is back because of Trump.
I think,
Twitter was big. Twitter got bigger and more known for news and the updates and what did Trump say. Like, that's been a thing the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, I'm convinced that Trump has some sort of investor or one of his
You think so?
funds or one of his venture capital.
Somebody
got some money in Twitter. I'm convinced.
Well, I can't
Why
wait.
Twitter, bro?
I can't wait till he gets arrested.
Why not Instagram? Why not Facebook? Why Twitter?
Because things travel quick on Twitter. That's like the gift. Things don't travel quick.
We're talking
on
about
Instagram.
a 70-year-old man, bro, who decides there's money in it, bro. He's getting money. I'm sorry.
You're so funny.
He's got money in it.
I don't know if I can't wait till he goes to jail though. Like I am looking for
Trump
the day.
That's never gonna
and
happen.
Deray all have money on Twitter.
Stop it. He's like the word.
Trump and Deray are working together. Can't you see it?
When that person hacked into my account, actually, they tweeted an endorsement of Trump.
See, I
from
knew
my
it.
account.
It
So
wasn't
literally,
a hack.
my other phone, people were like, "Can I get a quote?" And I'm like, "A quote about what?" They're like, "Your endorsement of Trump." I'm like, "I didn't endorse." And actually, I don't think I've ever said this publicly. So I get hacked, which was public, and then that night when I finally get my phone back, somebody texted me and they're like, "Hey, Deray, saw you got hacked." I'm like, "Who is this?" And they're like, "We're another hacker." And I'm like, I don't know you. And he's like, "You don't have to know me, but you should trust what I'm about to say." And he literally texted me every one of my credit card numbers, like every number I've ever had. It was like the craziest thing. And I was like, well, I guess you're real. And I'm like, well, do you have advice? And he gives me this advice about how to keep my stuff safe. He's like, this is how I have all your information. This is how I know your social security
Share this
number.
advice with us.
Not on the air, because it won't be,
Right,
it won't help me be safe.
right.
But it was sort of wild. And Snowden, I had Snowden on the show. Who is in Russia, and he also, we were talking about strategies to stay safe because people want to hack our stuff, and there was nothing that
You still talk to Snowden? No. Yes. Maybe.
You try? What does that even? Do I know Snowden? Yes.
You brought his name up.
Anyway,
You're
moving on.
I don't be like the FBI's gonna come to my house and be like, "Where is Snowden?" It's like he's in Russia.
They know
everybody.
where he is.
I guess they do.
They just can't go get him.
When I
And by
interviewed
the way,
him on
if y'all really want to get him, your boy Trump is boys with the main dude. So why can't you really go get him?
When we interviewed him, I have a podcast, and when I interviewed him on the podcast, we were really nervous that we might get sued because there's this clause in the Espionage Act that says if you transmit secrets, if he's on your show, you can get in trouble. And on the show, he talks about this place off the coast or whatever that is a listening spot for all the communications. And it was this whole moment, and because he's they're definitely listening to your
It's
stuff.
an island, right? I heard of this island. They have meetings there too, right?
They're listening to your stuff. And he was because I asked him, I was like, "Are there people listening to your stuff?" And he's like, "No, it's being funneled through like big computers essentially. So there's not like one person listening to all the phone calls, but the data is coming through. Like
one of the main I was told one of the main like internet hubs, like they have these different hubs all around the globe where all of the data kind of travels through, is right here in New York City.
I believe it.
Right in Lower Manhattan. In the
Biggest
bottom
police department
of the
in the country.
In Lower Manhattan, they have this whole, I've actually walked through it.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it crazy?
It's just a bunch of servers.
Okay.
But it's like, at a certain temperature and, it's in a building and
I love it.
there's security and you wouldn't, if you went to the building, you wouldn't even know it was there unless you know it's
that's
there.
crazy. I will say one of the other things, so spend a lot of time around the police and mass incarceration. Also spend a lot of time on the racial wealth gap. It's projected that by 2053, the median wealth for Black people is going to be $0. The lowest recorded wealth since we've been recording wealth since the 20s, which is wild.
Wait. You're talking fast.
So it's like the median wealth for
Before
Black
that,
people.
you said you're working on the what?
Racial wealth gap.
Okay.
It's projected that by 2053, the median wealth for Black people is going to be 0, which is wild. So when you think about the wealth gap, it's like white high school dropouts actually have more wealth than Black college graduates,
Yes,
which is
I've
nuts.
seen
Like,
that,
that's like a crazy thing.
But that's just straight racism.
It is racism. And remember that white people didn't have to work hard for wealth. Like the government gave it to them, right?
Right.
We gave them
you came to America as immigrants. They gave you farmland. They taught you how
we
to
gave
do
you
certain shit.
housing,
They
right? We gave you
houses,
free
all type of
education, like those sort of things. But I'm also interested in all the things that I didn't know, and that's why I do the podcast. Is like, you have a daughter? Did you know that all kids' teeth aren't baby teeth? That like when their molars grow in, they're permanent.
I've heard of this.
I didn't know that. So like in rural communities and low-income communities, people should get all parents should get their kids' teeth sealed. Like you can get the back teeth sealed, so they just can't get a cavity. Like there's like a coating that goes over it, so like food cannot go down in it, and like that's a part of like how we think about dental justice. Like how do we think about access to things?
It's all type of justice out here. Dental justice.
Yeah, it's like that sort of stuff. Like who knew?
You've had dental justice. You got those veneers. What is that? Is
Dental
routine that's
justice.
going on? Yeah, braces or
Dental
something?
justice. I love it.
justice.
You're great. The other thing is, do you know why kids eat paint chips?
No.
Do you know why kids
No.
eat? So the thing about lead is that there's no cure for lead, which is what makes like Flint dangerous in a lot of places. So the best you can do is like therapy, essentially, like to mitigate the negative impact of lead. But I was talking to a scientist recently and being like, well, why? I'm like, why do kids eat paint chips? Like, why do kids eat lead paint chips? Lead is naturally sweet. So kids eat it because it tastes like candy. And like, if I didn't believe in conspiracies, this made me believe in it, is that, there was a point in time in this country where the Federal Housing Administration actually mandated that the paint in the projects be lead paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
And
still dealing with that here in the city.
it's sweet though. Like who knew that it tastes like candy?
Never.
It's the fix is in, bro.
The
When you
fix
start
is- unpacking
it, the fix is in because as we've talked about, lead leads to behavioral problems in kids. Behavioral problems unchecked lead to incarceration.
Yeah.
And you're off on that path.
When I learned it was sweet, I was like, the game
never
is the
heard of
game.
that.
That is,
never
yeah.
knew
She
that
was just like,
too.
because I was like, why are kids eating paint like that? You just a bad kid. You eating paint chips. And then it was like, no, they think it's candy. Like, it's,
I thought, this whole time, I thought it was, how like you laying in your bedroom as a kid and you done got in trouble and you just throwing stuff at the wall. You looking for stuff to do.
I love it.
This whole time, I thought kids was eating paint chips just because the paint was coming off the wall. So, kids just be like,
Well, think about it. They're like, it probably does happen like that. They try it, and then they
'cause
know
I
that
think
it's sweet, and then they
think as a
continue.
kid, I think I ate my brother and I shared a bunk bed. I think I ate the stuffing out of the bunk.
what were you doing,
You
Ebro?
just pulling on it and then you put it in your mouth. Kids put stuff in their mouth.
Yeah, but it's sweet, and I'm like that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Another thing we look at. You even think about like testing, right? Like, why don't people get tested for STDs, HIV? Is that what some of the research is showing is that people. It's not that people don't care about their health, but that they are worried that they might know somebody at the clinic, right? That like you went to elementary school or like you went to
That happens a lot.
Yeah, so you just
Happens a
don't want to
lot.
go in because like your cousin's sister or something is there, and you're like, that's awkward.
Same thing strippers are worried about when they decide to go strip. That's why they always strip at a club like outside of town where they don't really know nobody because they don't want nobody coming in that they know. Same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I-
That was a good connection. That was good.
I love when you sometimes when you're on Twitter and you just like tweet the most random stories. But I saw you tweet about that Tennessee nurse who wrote like all these crazy prescriptions to
prescriptions.
herself. So
Yes.
she could be dealing on the side.
Yeah, like the opioid stuff is fascinating. It's just like it is wow when you what's interesting about opioids actually is that guess who is now having to learn how to deal with addiction and overdoses. It's
White people, suburbs.
It's librarians. Like a lot of people are actually overdosing in libraries. So librarians are actually they're being trained now in how to deliver Narcan.
Right, because so many students are taking all these crazy pills to stay awake. You know what I mean? Like, so they're in these libraries
and
overdosing.
like homeless people are going to libraries, right? And they're like to use a computer, but there's like a spike in overdoses in libraries now. So librarians are having to be trained, and you're like,
I'm still bugged out, you know. And it's a Democratic family I read. I forget their last name that invented oxycodone or one of the opioids. Maybe it's. I don't know which one it was. One of the codones, one of those opiates, right? That they got rich off, and they're like a family in, I want to say, New England somewhere, and they've been involved in the pharmaceutical business for a long time. It boggles my mind that legally a company invented some drugs. Obviously, it was FDA approved and whatever went on out, and people are dying, and families literally have no recourse right now, right? Like there's no big pharmaceutical company or no government official or attorney general that's been successful in taking down one of these companies that basically put drugs out that were addictive.
right.
People are dying by the thousands annually, and no one is going to jail. You know who's going to jail? The little dealer. Remember they arrested the little 90-year-old man up here in Manhattan who was slinging drugs out the back.
But on that's what I'm saying. Like, who's holding all these like nurses and doctors accountable?
Bro.
So the doctors, so the pharmaceutical companies, you're right, is that nobody.
But the doctors are getting in trouble.
So there are now these databases that are that's how they found out this woman. There are now monitoring programs that are being like, you are overprescribing opiates, and like, so there is some sort of accountability starting to happen there. That seems like it might be. You know, the hard part is that the people who need the opiates and are like using them correctly are being caught in the net of this sort of accountability. And that is sort of like an interesting tension that's happening. What is, you know, there are more people being killed by opiates now than the crack epidemic, which is sort of a wild thing that we're seeing. And you obviously know that there's all this compassion around opiates. There was not compassion around crack, you know?
That's racism.
Yeah. What's interesting about crack is that there is some of the new data suggests that crack babies were a myth, that like crack actually didn't do. That there's this idea, like in the popular culture, that when mothers were on crack, that like it had these long-lasting effects on kids.
Behavioral problems.
Yep. Studies are starting to challenge that now, that actually did more damage in like the psyche of America, that people that was true, but that like that actually didn't play out in the data. So that is like a fascinating thing. There are all these studies that.
Cool story, bro. I'm still going with, if your mom was an addict, it had some damage to your nervous system.
I mean, I'm sure.
How is that not? How is whatever your mother ingests not affecting your nervous system in some way?
So.
Even down, by the way, and I'm saying that, even down to like, high fructose corn syrup and like juices and all of these things that going into the baby. Like, I'm on that though. And that's also because my mom was a hippie and she was super organic in the 70s and yoga and all that.
Only pure juice for my baby.
We couldn't, bro. All we could have was apple juice. You wasn't drinking no juicy juices, none of the red, nothing.
Apple juice is a lot of sugar, though. Apple juice will rot your teeth.
It was organic, like it was brown, and it had like literally the pulp in it.
I love it.
Handmade apple juice.
Is that the type of parent you are?
Yeah, absolutely. My daughter can only drink water. That's it. I mean, out and about, her grandmother gives her orange juice, but in the house, water. That's it.
I love it. You're such a dad. My father, it was like every time we got sick, it was like, did you drink water? You're like, Daddy, my back hurts. He's like, water. You're like, what?
No, that's real. Water.
You're that guy.
Headache, water.
Right. You're like, I'm like,
water.
I'm like, I need
You
some.
took a nap. Yo, you having some emotional breakdown? You need a nap. You slept today?
Yes, I come in here, my nose is ringing. He's like, you ate cheese? You had dairy?
Yeah.
You're that guy.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm absolutely that guy.
Sometimes kids need like Robitussin.
No, once in a while it's cool, but I'm not giving my daughter. My daughter has probably had, in her life, I think she's had a fever twice.
And you attribute that to water.
No, I attribute that to her mother and the amazing breast milk that her mother gave her. I attribute it to her overall diet and sleep regimen and these
Her
things
exercise.
and exercise. Mm-hmm. Like, I attribute that to actually just us putting things in her body that are more valuable than putting things in her body too often that aren't valuable.
Right.
I'm not saying she's never had sugar. Of course she's had sugar, and of course she's had candy. But on a regular basis, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. She's not having juice on a regular basis or sweets and It's not happening.
And hopefully we can change things like food stamps that allow people to get more access to healthy food. You know, that's actually one of the things that's happening here with the Trump administration is that they're starting to clamp down on that stuff, which is really bad. Even, you know, one of the things I learned recently, because we're trying to figure out like how does mass incarceration become mass, right? And how do so many people get caught up in these systems that do damage?
Behavioral issues in food.
Is like, do you know the link between cell phones and domestic violence survivors?
No.
Domestic abuse survivors?
Survivors?
Survivors. You know, like Obama phones, which we shouldn't call them because Obama actually didn't
Never
start
even
them.
heard of it. I'm an Obama phone.
Oh, so the federal government actually has a program where people who qualify for federal assistance can get phones, like cell phones, right, for a low amount of money. It's not paid by your tax dollars. On your cell phone bill, there's like a universal service charge, and the aggregate of that actually goes to it. So the Republicans labeled them as Obama phones, so people would be against them because it's
Never even heard of
because like you're giving poor people phones. That was sort of the thing. They're like low plans. It's not a lot of minutes, whatever. But this FCC is starting to cut back on the phones. They were actually started by like a Republican 40 years ago. It wasn't Obama, but they get called Obama phones. The wildest thing that I did know that we recently learned because we're doing this project on domestic violence is people worried that when the phones get scaled back, that what men do when they're abusers is that they try and ruin a woman's credit so they can't open accounts in their own name. So everything has to go through the man. So like they can't open a phone account,
Of course,
a bank
form
account.
of control.
Yeah, it's a form of control. So the Obama phones, so a lot of shelters and stuff will give women these phones, like they'll be able to go around the man and get a phone. So people are worried that like when the program gets back, there'll be all these women who literally have no way of calling anybody outside of the home. And what's interesting is that in America, all phones have to be able to call 911, even if you don't have a plan. So a lot of shelters actually still give women phones with no plans, but like it's just a functional phone, so they can call 911 if they need to. And like you just don't even think about these connections, you know? But like,
Never thought of that.
when I learned it, I was like, that makes total sense. Is that like, of course, an abuser is trying to make sure that you can't call anybody else, you know?
course,
And you scale back this program, and all of a sudden, there are all these women who don't have access to call their sister, their mother, their cousin, or the police, you know?
I still maintain part of the mass incarceration problem is the reason I said it, lack of sleep and bad food and not drinking enough water, is that leads to behavioral problems. When these kids ain't out here sleeping, man, they live in neighborhoods where there's gun violence or there's sirens all the time. These
There's
kids
domestic
ain't sleeping.
violence in the household.
Violence in the
Yeah.
house. They showing up to school. They haven't had a good night's sleep. They're eating shitty food. They're not drinking enough water. And you expect these kids to actually, over a long period of time, be able to manage their emotions. Like, how do you act when you don't have a good sleep, you know, for 1 or 2 days? You start acting nuts too.
Yep. And you think about too, like what does it mean that they're a generation of kids that can't read and write, right? Like at a point, you know, I used to teach 6th grade math, and at a point, kids are like misbehaving because of these skill gaps. You know, like imagine being 20 years old and like reading at a 2nd grade reading level. That changes the way that you interact in community with people. You know,
This is why people don't like you. You're too smart.
you know,
You're too smart. You're well spoken. You always got to shape up. You know what I'm saying? The Patagonia vest. How many Patagonia vests you got? Real talk. How many?
So people give them to me as gifts, but I have one. I've been wearing this one for 4
That's the
years.
OG one.
Yeah, it's like why it has these little, you know, these little patches, the down's coming out, my zipper just broke. So they'll fix it for me for free because they fix people's stuff for free. Like
So let me ask you, why the Patagonia vest? How did that become a brand for you? And I think this is another frustration for people is because they see you, you're well-spoken, you're informed, you're a likable guy. Nobody likes a likable guy. Just put that out there. And then you have this brand, right? Which I think people go, no, it's a brand, it's a gimmick, it's not real. Talk about why the Patagonia vest and why it was important for you to brand yourself.
Yeah, I don't think about it as a brand. You know, like we were in the street for a long time. It got cold, so I needed something to wear that would keep me warm that I didn't have to pack. Because we'd be in the street till like 3 a.m., you know? So like you wearing a big coat in the winter, it's like running from the police in a big coat is not it. So if it got too cold, I put a hoodie on under it. And the reason I still wear it is that it reminds me that everything we went through was real, you know? That like I can be in enough rooms like this one. And like the tendency to forget, like I got dragged out of a police department by my ankles when we did the first sit-in of a police department. Like I never want to forget how fragile
But
freedom
there
is.
is something to be like, yo, you know me, I'm the black dude in the blue Patagonia. Don't get it twisted. Like,
Yeah, that's not
There's
how
gotta
I did.
be something
I didn't,
there.
you know, I don't think, like, there's a Twitter account for the vest, and I didn't make that stuff. Like, other people made that. You know, it's the same. I think about it like, I'm not asking you to remove your tattoo. You know, like, you got a tattoo because it means something to you, you know?
I don't have any tattoos.
Like, some people
Yes,
have
I do,
tattoos.
yes.
It's like, you know, I wear this because it means something to me, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
I
She's
didn't.
got some gangster, like, thug tats.
Oh,
Like,
please.
real
But
talk.
people wear jewelry for that reason.
Yeah. I never thought that like it'd be a thing for other people, and it means something to me, you know. Like so when I think it's pretty basic. I like wear the same stuff every day. Like it's like real, you know, not extra, but people experience it as like this thing. And you're like, That's just not. You said thug and gang. What is this? Made me think about being in a gang is not a crime, and which people don't know. They think that being in a gang is a crime. Being in a gang is not a crime. But what's interesting when you hear Trump talk about MS-13, actually, and all the conversation about ICE, what's fascinating is you never ever hear them talk about convictions. Because what ICE does is that they arrest you for being in a gang. They try and find some reason to deport you. And if you were in a gang and committed a crime, you have to go through criminal court. Immigration court is civil court. So, they can't convict you of crimes in there.
They can deport you.
They can deport you. So what happens is that they're actually deporting people before they ever have a day in criminal court, which is why you'll never hear the federal government talk about we convicted all these gang members who were immigrants, because they aren't convicting gang members they're not convicting immigrants who are gang members. It's not happening. They're only arresting them and then deporting them. It's such a ruse. It's
But
a wild
the
thing.
other part of it is MS-13 was created here in the United States. We deported that back to Central America. Those were the original
forget that.
MS-13 guys. People don't even know that. That started in Los Angeles. Those were not.
Yeah.
They were children who were it was like some skateboard punks.
I didn't know that.
But
Yeah,
they
and because they weren't Mexican or black, they were Central American. They had created a situation to protect themselves, and and then they were deported back during the Clinton era.
Oh, wow.
And then when they got back, our well thought out CIA was already destabilizing the government over there. So they get back, and there was civil war going on over there already, or down there in Central America. And that's how the whole thing really got going.
And a lot of them did it because of protection. But, it's like you sign it's like a death sentence once you become a part of that. But it's so real.
And ICE, ICE is sort of, the best way to think about ICE is the police for adults. There's another office that actually manages kids. So, and ICE has unilateral power to deport and whatever. So if you and your daughter are having immigration problems, there's different people that arrest your kid, and their counties, Suffolk County, literally the school system in Suffolk County is calling ICE on some of the kids who have behavior problems. And they are just going to their homes and deporting them the next day. And you're like, that is wild. It's crazy. The other thing that we spend a lot of time on thinking about in activism is the way we use language, right? So we never ever talk about police brutality anymore. We only talk about police violence, because brutality makes it seem episodic, it's randomly happening. Violence makes it seem really consistent. You even think about things like third world. It's there's one world, it might be a developing country, but there's one world.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard of
Yeah,
that.
or you think about
People don't say third world anymore. They say developing.
Yeah, that's nuts. Or the difference between equality and equity, that equality is everybody gets the same thing. Equity is that people get what they need and deserve. And the work of justice is almost always the work of equity. We're never asking for equal funding in school systems. We're asking for equitable funding, right? It costs more to educate kids in poverty. It costs more to educate kids with special needs. Diversity and inclusion. Diversity is about bodies. Inclusion is about culture. You can hire 20 more black people, still be a racist place, right? You can hire 20 more trans siblings and still have a transphobic culture, right? So the way even justice and accountability, right? It's accountability is what happens after the trauma. Justice is the fact that you never should have to experience a trauma in the first place. You know what I mean? And there's so much work to be done. Even here in New York, you think about 90% of the marijuana arrests are black and brown people. Right. You're like, that is 70% of the turnstile jumpers are black and brown people. And Eric Garner, chokeholds are actually banned here in New York City. Eric Garner was
choked and killed, and the guy that did it still employed by the NYPD.
But what NYPD says is that what is not banned here are strangleholds. And the difference between a chokehold and a stranglehold is a chokehold bans your airway. A stranglehold is an artery. And you're like, that's shady, right? So we spend a lot of time trying to tease those things out. There are a lot of cities across the country where officers can still shoot into cars. You're like, imagine being behind somebody. They get shot in the head by a police officer. You're in the middle of traffic. Their leg is still in the gas. Who wins in that situation? Nobody. You think about how deeply the police narrative is embedded in the culture. Have you seen Zootopia? You should have. Of course. Yes. Have you seen
My daughter, it's the wokest cartoon in the history of cartoons.
So the challenge with Zootopia, and the reason we struggle with it, is that you remember when the rabbit, somebody steals something, and she's on a rabbit.
Steals the onions.
Yeah.
He steals the onions, and then I forget what he was was he was that some sort of weasel or something? He stole the onions from the flower shop. She's chasing him through him. And they started to scurry.
So she's chasing him. If you remember that chase scene, she's running through people's neighborhoods, knocking people off the sidewalk. She goes into that miniature neighborhood.
With the little mouse.
With the little mouse. She's
started to scurry.
Yeah, and you think about that, you think about Bad Boys, you think about all these movies that have just reinforced this idea that regardless of how big the issue is, the police can sort of do whatever in community. And you're like, that is actually not a good message, right? That like, he stole onion. You know, it's not like he like.
Yeah, but those onions was being used.
Okay.
Right?
What were they being used for?
That's what they were putting in the guns. They were
In the
using to
gun.
make the serum to turn
Poison.
You're right.
turn the predators
You're right.
savage.
You're right.
Which is the other woke side of the whole like super predator
Yes.
thing in Zootopia.
Yes. We wanna believe though that there's another way that she could have gotten to him that didn't
sure.
require her to destroy
But she
people's
got in
communities.
trouble for that.
Yeah, but
Remember?
after
When she
it happened, yeah. I mean, I
after it
guess,
happened.
yeah. Like if she destroys your house and then she gets like penalized, you're like, I guess so. But she destroyed your house, you know.
Right.
And like even you think about bad boys. Bad boys, they're like shooting into crowds. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, did you really just shoot into that crowd? Or like even Bright, which was not a great movie. Did you see Bright on Netflix?
I turned it off. I couldn't.
Well, I didn't see it.
First scene in Bright, they're like in the bodega and they're like knocking people over, and you're like, that actually can't be the way that we think about justice and community. You know.
I would say that, you know, from what really happens in real life, I think, at least here in New York, I can't speak. You know, I've lived in the Bay, Portland, and New York.
Which Portland?
Huh?
The real
Portland,
Portland?
Oregon.
All right, that's not the real Portland.
Portland, Oregon, not Portland, Maine. Okay. Right. But Portland, Oregon. I would say that my experience in watching police deal with criminal activity just in the streets, they do attempt to try to block things off and be responsible. Like I've never seen a straight, you know, car chase through the streets where they didn't try to like section off the city and get the helicopters and really start to block streets. I think they do a pretty good job.
But you've seen some of the video. You think about that recent video in Baltimore.
I've seen some places where
You've
it's
been
terrible.
some places, and you're like, that can't be. And you think about all the stuff we didn't see on video. You're like, in Baltimore, the police department, they were like planting guns on people. You're like, that's, you know, people.
Well, Chicago's crazy too.
Yeah,
Chicago's
like that.
Crazy.
Chicago has a rule too that has been held by the court, so they can't enforce it. That they destroy police officer disciplinary records every 5 years. And you're like, who made these rules? You know, like that's just not.
Police.
I mean, well, yes, and like, why aren't people talking about that?
And attorney generals who have buddies on the police force. It's always been an inside job. That's why I'm happy to see currently at the midterms, it feels like there's some young women and black and brown folks, Muslim folks, and different people that are really getting their, you know, their leg up in the political game. And,
Yeah.
You know, especially here in New York City, there's a lot of Ocasio-Cortez,
Ayanna Presley in Boston,
Yeah.
Gillum in
Florida, yep.
and Stacey in Georgia.
But even Senate seats here in the state.
Oh yeah,
there's-
the IDC got taken down
The
essentially.
IDC got taken
the
down. It was a big
IDC's
deal.
like dismantled. Yeah.
And that was Cuomo, but I guess they'll get to Cuomo later. Shout out to Tish James, who the first black woman to even get this far with regard to becoming could be the first black woman attorney general we ever had in the state.
Which would be dope. Yeah. No, it is, you know, we think about the data around policing is that if you get killed in this country and a newspaper doesn't write about you, you just don't exist in the data set. The government doesn't collect data on it. So we can tell you like the rainfall in New York in 1900, but we literally can't tell you how many people got killed by the police last year. There's no data. It's all newspaper reports, which is wild. So like Florida, for instance, there are years that Florida has reported 0 killings by police.
Wow.
Like we know that's not true. Like that's just a blatant lie. So when we look
Well, some of this stuff, as we move forward, we're just going to have to fix as we move forward. Because when you start looking back, we know what it was. Like, you don't even
But
have
it's
to.
2018. You're like, there should be some, like, they died, you know? Like, it's not like there's some allegation. It's like the person is dead. We should be able to record that, you know?
Right, but there was periods in this country, very more recent than most people would like to admit, where the people who were getting killed by police didn't matter to
I
the
agree.
greater public.
Yes.
That's why the whole Black Lives Matter thing is a thing. It's because, no, these are human beings. They matter. And for a long time in this country, black people specifically did not matter. At all.
The data is wild. And, you know, we even look at, there's some places in Texas where it looked like white people were being killed disproportionately more than people of color. And we started to tease out the data. What we found is that Latinos are being miscoded as white because it's like just newspaper reports. If your name was like John Williams, they were like calling you white. And we were like getting information from people's families and being like the coding's wrong, so we could like recode the data. And you're like, there should actually be like a better way. I mean, we feel confident in the data we have.
But some Hispanics and people come to this country and they say that they're white because they've been told
Some choose to.
do not by any stretch of the imagination associate yourself with Chicano or black or any of these things, because those things are definitely seen as bad. I've heard it from Cuban people a lot.
Yeah, and Mexicans, just Latinos in general.
And the government actually, I remember when I was a chief human capital in the school system, is that the way we had to report the data to the EEOC, Latino wasn't a coding, so it was always white and something else. Like we couldn't report Latinos as like one bucket. They always were two. It was always two races, which is like the government choosing to do that to people. But
anything to keep black people out of the equation.
It's nuts, yeah. And there is
And
just
now
so
they
much.
trying to now it's like, wait, hold up, it's too many Hispanics now.
Right.
Now we got to figure out how to get that under control.
Yeah, it's like there's so much going underreported from this administration because Russia is such a big deal because it's a problem, and Lord knows the Supreme Court stuff and all that stuff. But like in August in Mississippi, 18 people died in Mississippi prisons. That's like 5 times as many people have ever died in 1 month.
There was a prison strike.
There was a
that
prison
just
strike.
took place.
In
That was
Mississippi?
in the country.
No, in the country. It was
There
a
was
prison strike in the country.
900,000 or some crazy number of prisoners
Yeah.
that were on strike all over the country for how they were being treated. It was not being covered
And
by
the
the
demands
news at
made
all.
total sense, right? Like the demands were honest.
How do prisoners strike?
They refused to work.
to
They
eat?
refused to eat.
Yeah, refuse to work. And like the prison wages are. There's actually an interesting study coming out soon. The wage disparity. So prisoners make like very little money,
Like 5
right?
cents an hour or something ridiculous.
But the wage disparity is actually a north-south disparity. So when you look at the data in the South, they get paid They get paid less because it was mostly black people in prisons and jails there, and in the North they get paid a little bit more. I mean, it's like not a ton more. It's like 15 cents, like da. I was actually just emailing back and forth with somebody who's incarcerated from the protests in St. Louis, and every time I email him, I have to buy an electronic stamp because it costs money to send emails. And you're like, this is just the biggest scam, Like
They're gonna make money anyway.
Like that is, even phone call. There's a big thing that passed here around phone calls, so that people don't have to pay for phone calls anymore. And in Maine, for instance, the government owns a phone, so like the cost is really low, like the phone calls. But there's some places that charge up to $3 a minute. You're like, who can afford $3 a minute?
Well, it's a profit. It's for profit. A lot of prisons are for profit. I mean, America is for profit.
Right.
I think a lot of times I get frustrated because we, in our efforts to be more humane and bring attention to things that are just insane, which they should be, oftentimes we forget that this whole social experiment is a for-profit social
But it
experiment.
doesn't have to be. Like parks aren't for profit. Like we have carved out parts of America that like exist for the public good.
Yeah, but that's a part of the marketing plan to make everybody feel good. Like the marketing plan of America is like, hey, everybody come, you could be free. You get here and a few generations into it, you're like, hold the fucking phone, man.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that we could.
And it's the best option, one of the best options on earth, so people end up staying.
But we could if they can rewrite the tax code on the back of paper towels and napkins and nobody reads it, we could actually undo all this stuff really quickly.
I think the work can be done, but people gotta want it. I think there's a culture in America that is literally based on, I want to work harder than you and I want to make more money than you I don't care how it happens. That's why I'm here. That's why my family came. When people go, I came to America for a better life, sometimes it is like, I'm literally running from being killed. A lot of times it's like, we came here to get paid.
Right. But remember that we gave white people wealth, right? So you think about the highway administration in Montgomery, in Alabama, like paved over low-income black communities to create the suburbs.
But even in California, they put freeways through people's backyards. Like, we don't give a fuck about y'all. We got a freeway going here so we can get this money so that people can get to work faster from out in the rich areas.
But we could do for people of color what we did for white people. We could give people housing loans, right?
For sure.
We could give people quality education. The biggest predictor.
That sounds like, what you're saying sounds like reparations, though.
Yeah, we should call it what you want to call it. I think that
I think you're going to need a new name. Reparations sends people around the bend.
It does send people. Yeah, we'll just say closing the racial wealth gap.
I like wealth gap, closing the racial wealth gap.
It's like a basic part of what we can't do is feed into the extremism. It's like a basic idea that people should have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? That's like there's nothing like radical about that. Like we should talk about this stuff in like the simplest terms.
It depends. How hard did they work? How hard did their parents work?
I mean, but what does a 5-year-old do to earn dinner?
I mean, in my house.
Oh,
right, water. They drink a lot of water. It's like, get your 10 cups of water.
When I was hungry, I just filled up on water.
Right. Eat that air. Eat that air. Eat that air. You already had dinner. I love it. You're hilarious. Yeah, but like, what does a 7-year-old do to earn like a good education?
Well,
that's
some
not
of
their fault.
What you're talking about is us, which I feel like Obama doesn't get credit for, which was starting a conversation about what we are doing with our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds to create a greater culture of responsibility around personal health, right? And participation in society, right? And I don't believe, because that's not necessarily what every household practices, I do believe that as a country, we could do a better job at culturally investing in our young people in a way that we help young people understand that this is what our expectation is across the board from a human, like you're saying, making sure that our neighbor is taken care of when they can't. You know, these are cultural things, but that's not, I don't think that's learned behavior. You know what I mean? In many households. And if we can make it a social understanding, which in some ways the social justice movement is helping that conversation, right? And many of the young politicians that are getting involved, whether they claim to be socialist or however they want to categorize themselves, I believe that that's where the country could be going, and hopefully will go, where there's just a common understanding of the general good, right? But there's also, I believe, needs to be a common understanding of the general effort on all people's parts to make sure that we're all participating in a way that can make it better for everyone else.
And the system's responsibility to create the conditions so people can actually do well, you know? So, like, focusing on 3, 4, and 5 is dope, and, like, we should do it. One of the biggest predictors of a kid's reading level, though, is their mom. So what happens when you have a generation of mothers who, like, can't read, and it's not their fault? Like, how did you get to 12th grade and you can't read? Like, we did that to you, you know? Like, like, a classroom full of 4th graders who can't read is not dumb 4th graders. That's failed adults, you know what I mean? And, like, if we don't figure out how to fix that stuff, it's like we are, there's, like, no great adult literacy programs in the country. So, like, it's hard to teach a room full of 20-year-olds who can only read picture books in groups, you know? Like, people's pride won't let them do that.
And I'm, like, hearing you say that blows my mind. Like, a 20-year-old not being able to read is like, what you been doing, though?
Yeah.
Dropping out of school.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. It's like what did we not do to, like, allow you to, you know, even I was talking
what was happening around you that made you feel like it was okay? But then some of that goes back to, but some of that goes back to personal responsibility versus how much the government is going to step in and make sure you're taken care of. Like, that balancing act of, like, and that's why I brought up the government being more involved in 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in that setup, because that setup in that zone, in helping parents be parents in that critical zone, in whatever way, sets a standard of expectation in a household. My 4-year-old knows what I expect of her already.
Does her school we're not
She's in Montessori.
We don't teach handwriting anymore. Does her school teach handwriting?
They're getting into cursive. They're getting into We definitely in her school, her mother and I have definitely been involved in, like, she needs to learn how to write.
So we actually don't. So a lot of public schools don't teach handwriting anymore, and the challenge with that is that, like, so they teach the letters, right? So you know, like, what a P looks like, and it's on the kid to just, like, learn how to write that. And you're like, that is wild, you know? Like, when we were growing up, there were, like, the tracing sheets, right? Like, you trace the letter B over and over, and a lot of schools don't do that anymore. So what you find is, like, you know, I know kids who are, like, 5 who they know the letters, they can read, but the way they interpreted how to do it themselves is just like a nightmare. Like,
that
you just can't.
Like crazy to
and
me.
you're like,
so you can give kids a paper with handwriting and they can't even read it.
Yeah, they
can
read it.
What about cursive, though?
They don't know how to. So cursive is its own thing. But even the basic, like, do you know how to make a P? It's like we are now, like, trusting that the 4-year-old just, like, saw it on the board and can make the P. And you're like, that's not how any of us, you know, we literally had tracing paper, you know, like, you just trace the P for, and, like, I know, you know, I worked in school systems, and, like, now you go in classrooms and you're like, their handwriting's awful, not because they don't know the letters, but because, like, they never learn how to write them. So now you're, like, unteaching a 6-year-old, you're like, that's not how you do a P, and trying to reteach it. And that's even worse. Like, that's like a harder I remember teaching math. I got 6th graders who were like, the bigger number always goes in the bottom. And I'm, like, ready to lose my mind. I'm like, I can't even teach you an improper fraction because somebody convinced you that the bigger number always goes in the bottom. You're like, that's like not right, you know? We got to figure this stuff out at the system level. But I'm happy that your daughter is getting real handwriting.
I mean, yeah, we're getting there. She can, her S, man, the 2, the S, the 5, we're that zone. We're in that zone, man. Where I'm like, the S starts on the right.
What's the ranking? What is she better at? Like the 2, the S, or the 5? Or it's all
2,
one blend?
The numbers are better, obviously. But I mean, letters still like the H, like she's still in that. She'll sound it like she can sound most of the letters.
How has being a parent changed the way you think about politics? Has it?
Has it changed? No. The only thing that has changed, I think I've gotten more passionate about local politics and really understanding how much the federal government, it's about money. And it's about, on the local level, make sure you got the right people in play. And so you guys as a community, whatever your locality is, however you want to look at that, as a county, as a city, as a community board, and then start to work your way to getting that money from the federal government that they're supposed to send down to the state and the city level. You know what I mean? And then let's work on what we got to do, because I think that's the piece that I've paid more attention to over the last probably, I would say it started 10 years when I really bought an expensive house. My first expensive house purchase, where I was like, wait a minute, what are y'all doing with the taxes? Wait, what? Wait, who's in charge?
Right.
Wait, who's this guy? What does he do?
Has Montessori turned out to be what you thought it'd be?
Yeah, it's good. I like it. I don't know if it's where we end up staying, but as far as education goes, I think that she's being exposed to concepts and ideas instead of just like this rigid learning system that's a one-size-fits-all program. That was my biggest fear in picking school, is that I feel like a lot of times black and brown kids get put in a one-size-fits-all program, and there's not enough customization based on strengths to help kids like identify their strengths, focus, improve their weaknesses, move at their own pace, in those early stages, which I believe builds confidence. Yep. And then later on, we start to tighten it up. You know what I mean? But, so yeah, I like Montessori. Laura, you like Montessori?
I don't have kids, so I don't have to do any of that.
Has has the way you thought about
this ain't just show.
I got questions though.
This ain't
has
just
it changed since you thought about
the Patagonia Blue Vest show?
One question: since Trump won, has it changed the way that you has it changed the way you showed up here?
Yes. I never cared as much as I do now. It just didn't affect me the same way.
Yo, I'd be on this radio ranting and raving about shit when Obama was president. Nobody wanted to hear it. They was like, really, bro? I'm like, y'all gotta pay attention, bro.
I mean,
you're not paying attention.
Like you've heard a million times, like definitely. Even when I ask my friends who never cared about politics, so when I see their kids, especially in their kids, being informed. When you travel, people abroad know everything that's going on with their government. They know what's happening locally, and then when you come here, everyone's like, they don't really care. I think now they're seeing a lot of things that hit home, and they're researching. They're going out of their way to get it.
I told y'all before Trump was president, y'all can vote him in if y'all want to. My tax is gonna be good. I'm gonna be all right. Money's still gonna flow around here. But telling y'all, listen, how many times was I on this radio and they was mad at me? I was like, look, I want Hillary to win. I don't love her.
Right.
She's got a tattered past. But y'all do not want this Trump thing, man.
That's a good title, A Tattered Past. That's good.
She does. It's facts.
No, I agree. I supported her, and I publicly supported her. Wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. People didn't believe him. They were like, he's being dramatic. It's like he was being honest to himself, and like he followed through on everything he said he was going to do, which is wild.
And that some people respect that. I mean, I can't lie. I respect it. How often have you seen a politician actually get up there and do exactly what they say they was going to do and be exactly who they said they was going to be?
Yeah, it's killing us. We gotta.
It's just that he's an evil person. Now, can we get a good quality human? I mean, look, I think Obama tried to do a lot of the things that he actually was set out to do and believed in. I believe he believed it.
Do you think we have somebody to beat Trump in 2020?
Do I believe we have somebody to beat Trump in 2020?
So far,
there are people who can beat Trump. I just don't think they'll run.
Interesting.
I don't think Biden will run.
You don't? I think Biden's running now.
I think he's supporting the midterms. I don't think he's really locked into a run yet, right? And then there's people who think that he's not going to run because of his tattered past, on
the crime bill,
and the crime bills and these other things, right? Bernie
Cory Booker.
I love Cory. He's a friend of the show. He calls and comes out. I don't think he's strong enough. On a national level.
You think Bernie?
Do I think Bernie? I like Bernie, personally.
Do you think he's running?
I don't think people are ready for Bernie. The same thing we saw here in the New York State level, where you had somebody like Cynthia Nixon. You still have a lot of 35 to 55 let's raise the number, 45 to 65-year-old old school Democrats who are fiscally conservative. They claim to be liberals. You're not. You're just like a moderate Republican.
Right.
And you say you're a Democrat, and when it comes to anything that's going to shock the system or force us, because I think that's where we are as a country. Like we gotta choose who we actually want to be. Playing this like middle road of like we're liberal sometimes, but when it gets crazy, I mean, can you calm down and be a little quieter? Can you protest different? I mean, I'm a liberal. You're
protest different?
You're messing up my football game.
Right.
We still live in that.
Do you think we have somebody?
I think that whoever runs in 2020 has to not run against Trump, but has to run for a vision of America that's bigger than him.
Yep.
And I'm worried that the people right now are all running against Trump.
That's right.
That if you run against Trump, you're only as big as Trump,
lose.
right?
You're going to lose.
You're only as big as him, and like he's just big.
Well,
right?
no, because in marketing 101, Trump is still top of mind.
Right.
And people will go in to check whatever or pull the lever or whatever it is, and they're going to look at their bank account, they're going to think about their life, and they're going to go, I don't really know this other person, but I mean, he was on the TV show, and he's funny.
Corey's bring it moment. Like, I think people are also ready for people to fight. It's like the world's crumbling around us.
If Corey wants to impress me, and I told him this when he called in, if y'all want to impress me right now, y'all won't even show up to this Supreme Court shit. Y'all won't even show up. And why y'all sitting there?
You feel like we got Kamala too?
I like Kamala, but yeah. Why y'all showing up? These tweets and all this is cool. Republicans wouldn't even pick up the phone for Obama's candidate.
Right.
They wouldn't even pick up the phone. What was his name? The guy that Obama
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland. They wouldn't even. He didn't even walk into their office. They wouldn't even put him on the schedule.
Right.
Democrats is mad smart, and we think everybody's smart and is gonna read the fine print. Motherfuckers ain't got time for that. They want to see you slap somebody, tell somebody to fuck off, and this is what the fuck we doing. Democrats ain't built like that.
I thought his bring it comment was perfect.
It was cool, but you still sitting there, man. You still sitting there, bro. Kick the fucking buffet table over, man. Knock a microphone off the stand.
That's
do
what
some
he
shit.
wants.
Can I work on your campaign?
Can you what?
Can I work on your campaign?
To campaign to do what?
When you run.
I'm not running with you. I don't hang out with these motherfuckers. If I can't tell you to fuck off, I'm not hanging out with you.
You can. This is what Trump showed us, right? You can actually.
Nah, I'm cool,
you can be
man.
the next.
Nah.
I'll be there. Like, let me know. I'm ready.
I ain't paid my taxes in like 6 years.
Oh, God.
I'm not going to be able to get around it like Trump and not show. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be able to do that.
Right. I'll be there. I want to work on your policy team.
And I don't like certain shit. Certain shit I don't like. Certain shit I'm not tolerant. I'm not tolerant enough.
But you know the issue. People.
I know some of the issues.
People
the issue
are ready
is,
for.
Let me tell you what the original issue is. The original issue in all of this and how we got here is motherfuckers is lazy, and all of us wake up every morning. We think somebody else is going to fix our problems. That's the biggest. That's point in whether that you're a GOP or Democrat, whether you rich or poor. You think somebody else is fixing your problems. They not. They getting money off you. That's all America's here for, is to get money off you. It's one big business. And I appreciate people like yourself that want to have a greater human convo. And people like yourself actually believe, just like Obama did, just like MLK did. People who believe in what America has the potential to be.
You totally can do it.
The biggest patriots ever. I'm not sure I believe. I'm only here to get money like the rest of these rich motherfuckers. I want to believe. I want to participate.
I like him confident. Like I'm like, we could take all this stuff down tomorrow. Like I believe it.
I think it sounds good. I think it sounds good. I don't believe
the tax bill really was like it was like they literally wrote the tax bill on scrap paper. People didn't even read it. It's like, don't tell me the end of mass incarceration has to be 3 generations. They did that on scrap paper. Yes. That is crazy.
I'm with you, and I just don't believe that people are. Just like I'll say it here in New York State again. We knew that motherfuckers were going to vote for Cuomo. Cuomo has been in office for like 25 years in this state. Is it him or his dad?
Do you think de Blasio is going to run for president?
I don't know. De Blasio don't talk to us no more. Once the lead paint shit and all that nitrous shit and he fucked up, and I was like, yo, bro, just say you screwed up, man. You trusted a lady and a team and they fucked it up. Just say it. He was like, we ain't heard from him since.
Well, who's the former mayor? I forgot his name, the rich guy.
Bloomberg?
He's
a Republican. He could probably win. He rich, but will America vote for a Jewish man?
Oprah
Oprah sounds great. It sounds cool. It's cute. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think she want to run either. And honestly,
She's not doing it.
honestly, the whole celebrity shit is whack to me. Unless you're really like, I thought Cynthia was really. She's been involved in this local New York City thing for like 17 years. Like while yes, she's a celebrity, she's actually been active too. Yep. You know what I'm saying?
And people discredited her because she was a celebrity.
Yeah, she didn't get the gay mafia attacks, did she?
What?
You know, because people, did she?
Yeah, she was embracing it. She was, because back when Cuomo's dad was running, they went at, what was his name? Ed Koch.
Oh, yeah, for
right?
being gay.
Vote for Cuomo, not the homo, which Andrew Cuomo, they said, did that for his dad back then. She came out and was like, nah, vote for the homo, not Cuomo. She was cool with it.
Oh, I love it. I saw most of the complaints I saw about her online were like, she's a socialist and she's like, da-da-da. Like, I actually didn't see a lot of gay bashing, I guess, because she got in front of it.
But it was really interesting, though, because I heard it here and I heard it from other people. They were like, oh, but she has an agenda she's pushing. I'm like, what agenda was that? She was like, you know.
People said that?
Yeah.
That is...
What agenda?
We had a guy here from the Bronx. He kind of went in that direction. What was his name? King? Representative King. He's from the Bronx, Co-op City, right? He's trying to do good things at Co-op City, but he was with Cuomo. And we could tell that he was like trying to flim-flam around the fact that people feel like there's a gay agenda, like you could just turn people gay.
What is that?
It's
ignorance.
ignorance.
I don't understand.
It's ignorance.
Yeah, and hate. It's just like a...
That's all it is.
But and a lot of that is based in religion. That's where the religion thing starts to play in, right? That's where that whole, what your religion is, because that's a big deal. That's why it's ridiculous. Even looking back, where it's like, oh, we had a Catholic president. It's like, so we had a Catholic president. Who cares?
I will say,
you know what I'm saying? Like, why is your religious faith tied to your politics? It should be about the issues, the business, getting things done. And that's why I'm a registered independent. Is because at different times in this country, and it hasn't happened yet, but based on what we need some socialist ideas right now. Right. We need, as people who make a lot of money, I don't mind paying higher taxes if I know that the people who are responsible are actually going to invest in the middle class in some way, who are going to invest in figuring out ways to get people in homes so they're not sleeping on the street. Like, I don't mind that, because I feel like we're a better country when more people have hope. Yep. The more people who don't have hope or feel like they can participate, the more we're having more division and the more this thing is going down the toilet. You don't invest in the middle class, or you leave it up to the greedy and the rich and corporations to like hire more and do all. It's not going to happen. That's not what they're in business for. They're in business to make a profit. Right. Unless the government checks their profit, it's like, all right, chill for a second. We're going to take some money off your books and we're going to reinvest in, you know what I'm saying? Like, That's got to happen. It's not, but I don't know. That's how I feel about it. That's probably why I never run for office, because I feel that it's kind of like anything else in your life. At different times, you need different things. Right now, we are at a critical time where we need to choose who the fuck we want to be as a country. Yeah. And if we don't choose who the fuck we want to be, we're going to continue to be the same thing we've always been.
It's not good.
Is exactly what we're looking at right now. Right. And that's not good.
I will say, too, I wrote a book, On the Other Side of Freedom.
Yes. I tried to bring it up earlier. You didn't want to talk about it.
That's not true.
I brought it up. It was like the first thing I brought you. It was like, yeah, for my book.
Stop it. Did we send you a book?
No, I don't have no book.
No. I love it. No. We did send you a book.
We had to beg for you to come on the program, man. We helped you run for mayor. We've been here for you the whole time, man.
I'm TV, bro. We'll send you a book. But the book's called On the Other Side of Freedom. Get it wherever books are sold. And we got to get you, I'm interested in how we can work together on some of these issues, because some of it is that people just don't know, like the lead paint, like that it's sweet. People don't know some of these issues. And when you learn about it, you're like, this is...
I think the one of the biggest things with you smart people is you think that people want to actually learn, and I would love to believe that too. Just tell them what they need to do. Okay. Lead paint is put on walls because it's sweet. So they've been trying to trap your kids with sweet paint on the wall for decades. Here's what we're going to do.
Got it.
All that historical, nah, B, where I need to show up, man. Who I need to punch in the face, where we got to show up.
We're gonna
I got to be at work tomorrow. That's how people think.
Get your kids' teeth sealed.
Check their back teeth.
Bite the lot. Yeah. Because when those molars go, that's it. They ain't got no more. That's not good. Oh, you see all those kids with caps in their mouth? You're like, you have never seen it? Mm. Yeah, like, and if your baby teeth rot, it's like, that's bad, but new teeth will come. Yeah. When those molars rot,
you're done.
You're done. Could you imagine being 7 years old with your permanent teeth destroyed? That's like,
Well, that's where you get a congratulations. You played yourself because I said you're trusting the food system in America to deliver you food that is okay. Just because it's on sale does not mean it is safe for you to consume.
We're going to get you in some food stamp advocacy. I got it.
Fam,
I'm leaving here with like a whole charge.
That's not going to
Yes.
fly either because I used to hustle food stamps back in the day.
All right.
So then they're going to
Deray,
bring that back up. It's going to be a mess.
Just know you're welcome here anytime.
I appreciate it.
Get the book On the Other
Anytime.
Side of Freedom, man.
I appreciate it.
Good
Thank you.
seeing you, bro.
Thank you.